start there. Um, yeah, so today we want to talk a little bit more, or pick up where we left off last time, talking about Ian Cameron's recent hijacking in Younger, and maybe explore a little bit about a little bit of the area where that hijacking happened, and talk about talk about that area and how that affects the hijacking. What are your opinions on this, Nate?
Uh, so I think the first thing to say is that in all of the discussions we've had about our personal experiences around hijacking in the lab happened at the same rough location. I mean, in some cases the same exact location, and in other cases within a quarter mile of that location. Although we've seen 100 different attempts and a lot of different experiences, all the way from when we pull the map up, we'll talk about where the highway exit is and how that constructs a bit of an opportunity for hijacking or at least smash and grabs, all the way down to probably another mile south um, of this location that continues to experience hijacking. But in the maps and the stuff that we were going over, as well as in our own experiences and the stories we told, those were principally focused on that same block where Ian Cameron experienced his assault. And I guess I'm not saying it was only an assault, although that's what it ended up being. But the way the MO of this experience sounds more like an assault than a hijacking to me at the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
Uh,
We went into that a little bit more last time about why you thought it was more of an assault than a hijacking. And one of those was essentially that it was like unusual, like the nature of the attack was quite unusual for a hijacking. You know, four young men wielding rocks to
mhm.
try and do a smash and what looks like a smash and grab that kind of went wrong. Well, firstly, like, is it a hijacking? Is it a smash and grab? Or is it something else? For a smash and grab, it's quite weird because there's a lot of people in the car, in the vehicle. So, and smash and grabs generally will not take on a complicated target like that. Also, they lingered. Smash and grab is a very you hit the victim fast and you get away fast. So you throw a rock through the window, you chase it up with your body to grab whatever's in the car, and take that out, run away. And they didn't do that. They stayed behind and they assaulted the victims, which is really weird for a smash and grab. For a hijacking, you'd have to get the victims out of the car so that you can drive away the vehicle. That's also quite difficult with three people in the vehicle, although not unheard of for lots of people in a vehicle and trying to hijack that. But what is unheard of is to try and do that with rocks and not have a firearm. Um, so a lot of
Yeah,
this, yeah, a lot of that kind of does add weight to the theory that maybe it is a assault. And then we sort of explored reasons why someone might want to assault them, and also like the legacy of using that tactic to essentially scare people away from the area. So you can sort of monopolize or dominate an area, or like whatever entity wants to monopolize or dominate an area in the townships, can do so by essentially scaring people away by enacting these kind of tactics where they'll like throw rocks at a vehicle, just sort of commit random acts of violence against the person they want to deny entry to it. As they enter, like that sort of thing. Just basically make it an unfriendly space for them, and that basically gives them an opportunity to do whatever they want in their little fiefdom, sort of create a fiefdom for them that where no one's really watching. And in this case, Ian Cameron and the two other DA MPs were going to do a surprise inspection on a South African police department academy, or that's a
they had done.
facility. Yes.
So
Oh, yes, they
they had
had done it.
already done it.
Yeah.
So that's that. I think it's because for me, what, and again, I want to be cautious. It's not a certainty, but for me, what adds weight to this theory from my side is having experienced that myself and having friends that were causing general, dissatisfaction amongst the political powers that be in the community have experienced this before, where they'll go to a meeting, like him going to SAPS, even if unannounced, and at the end of that meeting, experiencing groups of children, and I say children, I mean, like young to old teenagers, just kind of showing up and attacking their vehicles with rocks and stones. In this case, the thing that's perplexing to me, and it doesn't necessarily help answer the question, is this happened at the hijacking epicenter of Cape Town. So not just the area, but the specific block, the specific intersection is the one that has the most experience with this. And there's a group of guys that float in and out of there that we know and have talked to, that kind of, for the most part, are the traditional hijackers of that area. If you go on to Govan and Becky and you drive up and down, for those that don't know, that's more of like an urban highway.
Yeah, let me load up the map quickly.
Yeah, it's
Just
worthwhile.
gonna quickly do a screen share here and load it up. So
But
this
qualitative
is this is in Younger. Gavin and Becky
is that
is
double road there, yeah.
this
And Govan
this
and Becky experiences random, slowdowns, and people will come up, smash a window, either take a purse or take a car. But there's not a specific place where that happens all the time along Govan and Becky. It's kind of opportunistic. Sometimes there are big potholes that won't be repaired for a year, and that slows traffic, which creates the opportunity for those kinds of crimes. But if you go up and down Eisleben, which is the big intersection there, uh, right there where your cursor is where this happened. And so what you have, just to go
yeah.
back over
So
this,
so so sorry, just to zoom in, this intersection here of Eisleben and Gavin and
yes,
Becky is where the hijacking happened, right?
yeah,
This,
my guess is just half a block south of that,
oh, okay. So you're thinking maybe around about
right
here
there.
somewhere. Yeah, like right
Right
here.
there along, so you see all the solar panels on the roof here. That's the junction. That's Philippi Junction, and that is the new mall that went up recently. And by recently I mean the last like 6-8 years, that has changed the dynamic of that road substantially. And it's a seriously sized mall for the community, and largely patronized by the community. um, and so because of that, and across the street is Philippi Village, where we worked, where you see this tree-based spiral target. That's our old work. And then above that is another little mini mall, another strip mall with Pick and Pay and other businesses.
Oh yeah,
So
right up here where
right
the
there,
ShopRite Philippi is
ShopRite, not
located.
Pick and
Yeah.
Pay. Sorry. So you have a confluence of business happening, and they have not done anything to expand that road from when it was derelict, and it was totally derelict. For those that don't know, 10, 15 years ago, it was run down and abandoned sort of factories that had been stripped. Rory, who we should actually have an interview with, was working there during that time and spent time trying to kind of like build social cohesion through murals on derelict buildings. Um, and so they tore all that down and built these new economic centers, but the city hasn't caught up to build new infrastructure to match. So Govan and Becky hasn't changed, neither has Eisleben in that time, which means there's this huge bottleneck right where your cursor is. There's a bus
Yeah,
stop there,
right here.
there's a taxi exchange there,
Yeah, let
and it
me.
means that at any given time, yeah, drop it. Like traffic might be at a standstill and you might be stuck there for a half hour.
Yeah, you can see the traffic back up. In fact, if we go a little bit further, you could see how it really
And
backs up here.
where the mattresses are, and that bus stop you're even looking at, right?
Hmm.
That is the key area in which this generally occurs. There's no way around it. They've stacked the informal businesses are stacked straight up to the corner of the road there. And if you go back down the other way, just rotate,
Okay.
you see
Yep.
that bus stop there where the taxis are.
Oh yes, I see.
Yep.
Yes, right there,
So that also
where
serves
the
as a
Avanza is.
right, and that's
Mm.
a theoretical taxi exchange, and that's where they tried to hijack me. Was they stopped a taxi, and I got stuck right in this roughly this position, maybe 20 feet forward, and I had three cars in front of me stopping it, and they came up from behind and threatened to shoot me if I didn't give my car. But that's a more typical MO. They're coming from the south, which happens just as much. So the car facing you would have been roughly where they were at, and same thing can happen coming up, and does often happen in terms of traffic. And people will come up and try to hijack cars and leave on Govan and Becky because it's a bit of a faster road. Now, the reason I think that this is tricky is because like the amount of damage these guys were doing to the vehicle is looks intense. You know, it wasn't an attempt to break into the vehicle. They were trying to smash all the windows.
That's right, which is unusual because if you're doing a smash and grab, you're just going to target the vehicle the items in the vehicle that you want to steal. So beforehand, they'll spot, oh, there's a handbag there, maybe a laptop bag there. When we sort of toss a brick through the window, we'll follow the brick through with our body, grab the handbag, out, run away. Here, that they didn't do that. They just threw bricks through the window, and it just became a massive mess. They just stayed
Yeah.
there. They didn't seem to be that interested in theft.
And clearly they didn't have like an exit strategy. They went at this for a while before getting shot, and only then backed off. And I'm sure this is urban legend already in the community at this point. I mean, I remember one time about a mile from here, there was an attempted hijacking where four big Afrikaner dudes got out of the car and beat the shit out of everybody. And that story went around the community like wildfire. I mean, there's a degree, and I think it bears mentioning, where the community likes seeing these guys get their comeuppance. I mean, like to a large degree, hijackers are feared, mocked a little bit behind closed doors, and treated like untouchables. And by that, I don't mean untouchables like made mafia men. Treated like the untouchables of India, where they're just dirty and dangerous.
They're just despised by the community.
Yes, exactly, right. And so when this happens, they're all still dead afraid of them, but they also relish the concept of them getting punished in a way. Um, and and I think, you know, without going too into the theoretical, psychological, social issues, you know, that's largely what drives this crime, is that there's all these teenagers that are being treated as scum of the community in a community that's as poor as this as it is, and they turn to crime as a response to that. But that cycle of crime notwithstanding, the the issue here is these were not the sort of usual guys that we would have seen or know on this street, because they wouldn't have brought a brick to a gunfight.
Yeah, yeah.
So I find this very interesting, and before I zoom out a little bit to the politics of this and how that plays out on the ground, I just wanted to see if there was some other, like, because I don't think we should leave these images yet either, but I wanted to see if there was some other sort of like analytical thing you wanted to look at within this.
On this level, no, not really. I don't really have too much sort of an analysis of what happened on the day. I don't feel like I know enough.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Really,
I'm
really, we'd have
nervous
to
about the
sit.
armchair quarterbacking I'm doing here, but
Yeah,
yeah.
really, we would have to sit down with the victims, or the witness involved in this, to get an understanding of the details necessary to do a real analysis. At the moment, we're kind of, we're all just theorizing what might be the case or what might not be the case. What we do know is that it happened. We know roughly where it happened, and we know we have a basic idea of the context that it happened. That they were doing an inspection of a police facility. It was a SAPS facility, if I'm not mistaken, and not the
Yeah.
Metro facility that's
It
much
was
closer
the
by.
training academy.
That's right. Actually, it's worth. Wonder if I can find it here on the map.
It's south. It's
It,
south
yeah.
on even further south. So before you leave this particular stop, go back up just a bit.
Yeah.
Where Sheffield Road intersects with Eisleben, sorry, down,
Right,
is
right
another
here.
one of the main hijacking areas.
Yeah,
And
right
so
here.
they were right in between two main hijacking hubs. And this one's far more informal. This is basically, um, you know, you've got informal business on the corners, and you've got kind of a badly, actually, I'll say it this way, an almost near completely ignored traffic signal So the taxis largely run this corner, and they run it as well as a taxing portal. So they tax the taxis, right? Sorry to have to repeat the term.
Yeah.
They they extort their own network of taxis from this corner often. So they'll bottleneck this in order to extort money. Hey, look at that. Look at who's there. Hold on.
Oh
Look at
yeah.
these orange vests. That's the
Oh
guys we
yeah.
train. So they did this drive through when we were doing the traffic monitoring program. So um, this is another corner where a ton of hijacking happens. That's why you see some of the orange vests here. Um, and Philippi, what's it called? The sort of EPWP
Oh, the
program.
Philippi Improvement District. Yes.
Yeah,
That Egbert is involved with.
right. I
Yeah.
want to get the name because that's embarrassing that it's not coming up immediately in
I
my
think it's the
mind.
Philippi Improvement District.
That's what the area is called, but
Yeah.
I'll remember it later. So the agency that's sort of managing and trying to deliver this sort of security, it's not so much securitization as it is like monitoring. So they're very specifically just there to observe and try to report so that we can get some kind of data and patterning around what happens here and think about what intervention may be possible. So that's the intersection they would have gone through beforehand. So there's the reason that that's significant in this case is they were right in between two what are effectively barricades of potential uh, hijacking, and it also means that there's a strong opportunity for scouting.
Yeah. Yeah, but largely because of this backup in traffic, which you can see up here. It all
Yep,
gets
that
backed up.
backs
You can
up.
see it backs up,
All these
backs up.
taxis sort of block roads and slow
Yeah.
things up, and then because that robot traffic signal for everyone else in the world
Yeah, this
is
one
not
here.
is not observed. As you can see, there are cars going wherever they like in
Yeah.
this.
Let me just go
It,
back a bit. There you go. Yeah, it's
kudos to the Google drivers that fought their way through this to get these images.
yeah. I mean, like, everyone just treats it as a four-way yield sign, not even a stop sign, just a yield sign. So it makes driving through this intersection very dodgy. And then on the side here, you could see the prefabricated
Houses,
shacks.
yeah, they
Yeah,
sell
that are sold there.
to
That
the informal settlements, right?
yeah.
Yeah, or to just backyards, and even businesses, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
going for like maybe like $10 each or so, something like
I
that.
can't remember. We do have it in our data somewhere, like what the rate was at the time that they were selling those at. Um, but yeah, it's just it's corrugated tin and 2x4s in a box, right?
Yep. Yep.
So essentially, they're coming, and they so if you want to go back out to the map,
Yeah.
if you keep going south, I can't remember exactly where along Eisleben, but down on lower like South Eisleben, there is that might be,
Ah, here
that,
it is. Yes, SAP's Police
so
Academy, Philippi.
yeah.
Yes, this is the place. So
So
he
this is what
was.
they went to inspect,
Yeah.
and they had the exchange they described on that, in which the person is saying you need to apologize to our person. Now here's what I want to talk about with this, right? Is not just that I've seen this happen before with various politicians, but I think there's like a confluence of relationships that people are generally unaware of, but won't surprise them in South Africa. So Philippi being a near exclusively black community, um, is largely, still kind of old school in its think, and it's also very Eastern Cape because
Mm.
of all the informality. It's a newer informal area, and a lot of the people that have moved in there are from the Eastern Cape, and that means they're kind of diehard old politics. If you mess with the ANC, you're messing with our community, and SAPS is still considered ANC.
Yeah. Yeah, because
So this is this
it's
is
a
a tricky
national,
thing.
yeah, it's a national police force, which is run by the ANC, which is in control nationally, as opposed to the Democratic Alliance, which is in control in the Western Cape.
And whom Ian Cameron right now is aligned with.
That's right. He's a DA MP.
So what it means on the community level, and you anybody watching this that doesn't have a familiarity with the townships, and ourselves included, we need to think very hard about how we articulate this, is we have to strip away our concept of like government largely to understand this dynamic. SAPS is considered a part of the ruling party for the country. This community considers the ruling party of the country not only their political party generally, and that's who they principally vote for, but also their struggle party. And whether the ANC has, ruined that brand for themselves, I think most people would say they have almost entirely. It doesn't change the dynamic on the ground that much. On the ground, people still feel like the DA is not their party and the ANC is. And obviously, there's fissures within that. And there are people trying to, create some level of partisanship within the community. But here's how that plays out in the way that of governance in an informal community is that their only means of enforcement becomes social. It's the relationships they have, the agencies they trust that have pledged some sort of allegiance to that cause and or brand. And so, for example, some of the things I would see, and I'm not going to say this happened here, but I would not be surprised if SAPS and the politicians within SAPS, and this is a SAPS Academy, it's not a precinct. This is important because it means they're going to be even more strictly related to national.
Yeah. Yeah, because at the precinct level, the station master has got a lot of autonomy, a lot of control. So it's like that Chinese saying, the mountains are high and the emperor is far away. The station master has got a lot of control because Pretoria, the capital, doesn't actually really know what's going on. Whereas at the academy, it's very much connected to what's going on at the national level. So yeah, they don't have the same level of localized autonomy and independence like the police stations have.
So what happens here is like they all live and work and have relationships with various agencies and entities within the community. And they're aligned largely to those agencies and entities that align themselves politically with the ANC, the ward councilors, the various neighborhood chiefs, and so on. And so, what I like about him sharing the exchange with this, I can't remember what their rank was, but whoever it was that received them at the academy, is that that's the way things get spoken about in Philippi. When you walk into a place and you have said something that upsets the leader of this agency, it is spoken about with some degree of like military reverence. It's very much like, you have offended my boss and now you must atone.
Well, it's more than that, actually. Ever since the remilitarization of the rank structure in SAPS, they're now referred to as colonels and generals, and they like to use the military sort of officer referral system, and they're quite insistent that other people sort of respect that hierarchy as well. It's become remilitarized as one of the Jacob Zuma era reforms, if you will, the remilitarization of the police in terms of this ranking structure. So yeah, it's become even more hierarchical in the past 15 or so years.
And the reverence with which that it sort of is weird. It's like one of those times where in so many of these particular areas, the traditional reverence for leadership ends up being translated into the formal, right? So these government agencies sort of the people that are running them benefit from some people in the community's reverence for leadership that comes from sort of tribal organization. So it's this sort of like passing on of like, you have upset the person that governs this space. You can just call him the governor, and you need to atone for that. Now, the way that plays out in this circumstance, or could have played out, let me be very clear, I don't know, would be that they've been talking for weeks about this guy who is upsetting their apple cart, calling them corrupt or otherwise inefficient and derelict in duty. And they're mad at him, and they're like, oh, when he comes here, he's gonna see. And so what happens is he goes there to do this inspection. They have this exchange. Somebody says you need to apologize, A, B, and
And
C.
just to confirm, so it was the case. I'm asking. It was the case that he did the inspection first and then was hijacked.
According to the reporting, yes,
Okay.
he was coming back from it.
Okay, cool. So that's an important note because last time we got a bit confused that he sort of
Right,
did the other way around. But
right.
yeah,
We thought he
that's
was
really
going
important because
through
it
it.
means that they would have known already that he had come and gone, so they would have had time to set something up if something
All it
happened.
takes, right? All it takes is like somebody in the receiving section through to the boss to have seen them come in, have the whatever their emotional reaction is to this guy who's making their lives harder in some way, and decide to tell somebody else they know in the community that this guy's here, because that will spread to the people that need to know. And if anybody in that chain of like the business, I'm going to say the business forum because sometimes they're involved in these kinds of relationships. Uh, the various community networks or leadership. Am I freezing on you, Douglas? I'm getting a red symbol.
No, you're fine.
Okay. Um, those guys, all it takes is one of those guys, a politician, a community leader, a business leader, somebody who just really thinks that the old way of handling these kinds of things is the right way of handling these kinds of things, to say to somebody they know, and they all have a contact they think is rough and tumble and can make threats, that Ian Cameron is here and, we need to let him know. And then that trickles down to somebody who pays kids to do these things. And I know that happens because I used to work with those kids. And they would tell me which politicians and which business forum guys and which SAPS people were involved in paying them to cause problems for people, to hijack vehicles, to assassinate people, to do all these other things. And so that happens not, I don't want to say regularly, but it's not unusual for it to happen in the community. And mostly the reason, if you take a step back and think about it logically, it's the only thing that makes sense. 18-year-olds don't care who their politicians are. Why would they shoot them?
Yep.
The stakes are too great.
Yeah.
They'll do it for money, but they're not doing it as a passion project.
Yeah. They're not politically. Also, I mean, like that area is pretty politically demobilized these days. I mean, you've got a great story about trying to meet up with the ANC Youth League in the area, and the ANC is still the largest predominant party in that area when elections come around, and how there was no ANC Youth League at any of these branch meetings. They were kind of a phantom entity, and
Yeah,
that's an example of how it's these areas are actually quite depoliticized. So like there isn't much political compulsion to do it for ideological reasons or
right.
politically passionate reasons. It's more mercenary typically.
Especially amongst the youth, right? I mean, like they're kind of a lost generation of, I don't know why I'm voting for anything. I don't see anything, so why vote for anything? Like, what's the point? And they, broadly speaking, especially the shooters in the corner kids, they're not sitting there chopping it up about politics. So they're, if they're going to go shoot someone that's a politician, whether it be an ANC councilor or in this case, an MP a DA MP, like they're not doing it out of like a recognition. Oh, that's that guy I hate, right? They're just, they were just sent. So if this was not a normal hijacking, the way that would have played out is essentially through this trickle down method of community informing. And then somebody basically paid some kids some nominal fee. And I mean nominal. It's like
Like,
they'll hijack cars for, 200 Rand, which is for everybody else $10. Um, they'll go and attack a car. And the other thing I want to say is when we were doing that deeper dive into all of these hotspots in the broader Philippi, Mitchell's Plain, Samora, Michelle, and Nyanga area. So we were in like sort of a 5 precinct Indaba, so to speak. This MO was the MO we heard about from Samora Michelle, the rock throwing sort of uh, let's it doesn't matter how much damage happens, we're just going to try to like grab a car, joyride it, sell random parts, and dump it. That specific MO was mostly in central Samora Michelle, done by younger kids. So what are those, if it's the same kids, or if it's that MO, or if it's that age group, what are they doing at the Hijacking Central at that time for that specific car in this unlikely circumstance? And doing it to a car that, like, usually those guys are doing it to Golfs. You know, when kids are trying to like attack a car, and by kids I mean, you know, groups of children that are throwing stones and doing silly things like that. And I say silly because it's a very different. I've experienced it. It's a very different kind of experience compared to a gun being pointed at you. Um, they they don't, you know, they know they're not going to, you know, they're not part of a bigger network of trafficking cars. They're not going to like strip this down for parts. They're going to just unload it. They're going to joyride it if they can, and they're going to unload it.
Yeah.
And that is, and the reason I bring that up is because this was not a car that seems to lend itself to that process.
What type of car was it again? I
From what I
forget.
can tell in the images, they're in a truck, like a full SUV.
I'm not so sure. I mean, I think it's a sedan, but either way, it's an
Yeah, take a,
unremarkable
if you can see a
white
better image
vehicle.
than I did, that would like that would help too. But let me, sorry, Douglas, while we do that, I just got to run to the bathroom. I'll be right back.
Cool, no worries. Okay, so I've got a recording here from, like a mini report from, I think it's Eyewitness News, which I think is worth sort of watching just to get a sense of the context of where the hijacking happened. I'm just going to quickly play that for you. Here we go.
The incident that occurred here yesterday, it's one of many that happens on a daily basis. The issue of this stretch of road is that its high crime rate has increased since the establishment of the Junction Mall. And now that the Junction Mall is there, it's also impacting on the traffic flow, which is also impacting on the traffic itself, which is causing congestion, which results in this type of markings, smash and grab, that are taking place in and around this area. The issue has been raised on numerous occasions with the Portfolio Committee of Safety and Security within the City of Cape Town, where we brought this to their attention in terms of the traffic congestion, as well as the CCTV camera installation, as well as ensuring that there are law enforcement agencies during peak hour traffic as to avoid such incidents. It's a pity that it has taken somebody of a national search of MP Cameron to actually receive the assistance that we've required.
So that's a News 24 video, basically interviewing a community member who's sort of finding a silver lining in the attempted hijacking, talking about the Philippi Junction that we were just talking about beforehand, and how it's highlighted that road as highly problematic because of the growth of business there, and also just a need to upgrade that road, just period. But I can't seem to find very much yet. I'll keep looking of information regarding what car Ian and the two other DA MPs were driving on the day.
Yeah, and that, it bears mentioning. We have some experience working with that counselor on multiple workshops. I'm going to hesitate to give a review, because those are tough. Those are tough scenarios. Like, I mean, for those of us who watch news and see what's going on, for example, in the States around town halls, or have watched the more vociferous town halls that even Ian Cameron might have attended when he was still a civilian. That's kind of what they're all like in the community. If the counselor shows up to a public event as a participant, it becomes like a series of loud arguments and gripes aimed at that counselor ceaselessly. So it's kind of one of those things where you just don't. Trying to turn off my notifications here.
Wow, it's going nuts.
You remember there was that time where I was getting those calls from insurance, and it just would never end. And we couldn't even have a conversation. How do I close it? I gotta turn this off.
Okay.
So anyway,
let's keep on going.
So
you're saying about the councillors and how when councillors pitched up at local events, the community would often use this unexpected access to their elected representative to to basically tell them the issues that needed to be resolved, because there were so many issues that just were consistently not getting resolved.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the challenge of navigating those events, is because you want the counselors present to hear the information that you're trying to present and trying to elicit from the community. However, the community also wants to just give their own direct account of it without it being sort of like synthesized into something that can be actionable. And so I won't review him, because I think those are tough circumstances in which to respond to anything. And yeah, I won't, and I wouldn't say his were any worse than any others I've seen. So the issue that I think like they're pointing out in that particular instance is, it is essentially just like they're complaining that there's been a long-term poorly articulated and poorly developed plan for redeveloping that area to better deal with at least the pedestrian element of it, if not also some of the traffic element. And I say mostly pedestrian because like I don't see in the plan that it's very thoughtful about traffic and what's happening. They also want to put one of those guarded bus stops, and by that I mean like a dedicated lane for the My City bus to come through there, and it's just going to cause a whole bunch of other panics and crises. So with that acknowledged, I don't know. The sense I got from the close-up shots was that it was an SUV. It might not have been. You're right. So I'm not sure, because it's all close-up.
I don't think it matters either way. What matters is,
it matters in terms of what I was saying earlier, which is like it's not the MO of that age group and the type, the demographic that particular MO suggests, as well as the kids that got hurt. Or did he kill one of them?
One was seriously wounded. I will have to look up if they died or not. But they were in critical condition. One of them who got shot.
Yeah. So like the demographic involved in this don't tend to go after certain types of vehicles, is I guess what I'm getting at here. So until we know what vehicle it was, it's kind of I got the impression that it was a bigger SUV.
Yeah, either way it didn't strike me as the type of car that was a popular target for hijacking. It was a pretty nondescript vehicle, and the DA would have been quite careful to have selected a vehicle that wasn't particularly in high demand in that community for hijacking anyway, because they like to choose these quite nondescript cars for these surprise visits.
Yeah. So all of that, it's a very interesting situation. I mean, I think in the other point of that video is it's like I think they called it a blessing in disguise or something like that, right? Which is what they mean by that, which they never really appropriately articulated, is this is a crisis that nobody's dealing with.
Yeah, the traffic and crime problem along that street.
The hope that they have is that, well, at least it's a high profile enough person that maybe somebody shows up to do something about this. I doubt it.
Yeah, please tell me more. I mean, I've got my own theories as to why I also doubt it, but I'm interested to hear yours.
So as much as everyone is celebrating Ian Cameron's courage, or Ian Cameron, he his usually the story ends there. We had a scenario where in Delft they shot and killed a municipal worker that was on a mission from city government, and we had a whole bunch of you know a riot about what are we going to do about these traffic mafias that are killing people. They've now killed somebody in our office, and we need to do something about that. And quite seriously, like, nothing has been done. So Ian might want to do something. At the end of the day, he has to whip the same city that everyone else is trying to whip into delivering a product. And I just doubt that they have the political will for that. What it does do is it makes Ian's star rise substantially.
Yes, yeah, I agree with that. It gives him, it enhances his crime fighting persona and profile, um, which does help him politically, even though it's a tragic thing that you wouldn't want to happen to anyone, at least for yourself. And you can definitely sort of I don't think it's worth taking a brick to the face for, which is what he got.
Yeah.
It definitely has that effect. But for the community, it's, yeah, I mean, there are a couple of reasons why I don't think it'll sort of raise this as much of an issue in the city of Cape Town as it needs to be. One of the reasons that you talked about, in that it's essentially a somewhat neglected community. It's somewhat marginalized. It's just not top of forward of mind for the city council. The other one is that they do have ineffective councillors who are just not really good at serving their communities by and large. No comment on the one who was interviewed earlier. I don't know the quality of his service to the community, but I know generally that community suffers from that problem amongst the councillors on average. And the other one is that it's really expensive and difficult for the city of Cape Town to do work in that area for this exact reason, right? It's so crime-ridden and so chaotic that finding contractors to go out there and do work is extremely difficult and extremely expensive, and it takes a long time to organize. And that's a big reason why potholes take a long time to fill in and get so much worse. It's a big reason why infrastructure gets more neglected than it does in the rest of the city. And it's one issue that very, very few people talk about, is the how the quality of, or how the factors of crime and the factors of the general chaos in the area basically makes it very difficult for service provision in these places. And there are many reasons why it's difficult to operate there, beyond why the crime problem is so bad, especially for service delivery, beyond just random acts of crime. But that is the case, and the community is the one that suffers.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's gonna, I think we haven't gotten into the whole construction mafia thing, but like that kind of begets a whole bunch of other discussions about the organized crime elements and the informal extortion networks that exist in a space like that the city's going to have to navigate, and quite honestly hasn't shown any ability to navigate, to get something done there in that section. You're going to upset a number of people in trying to build anything there, whether it's roadworks or otherwise, and it's just going to require a fairly extensive and expensive sort of process of engagement and buy-in, and all of that comes with let's call it greasy palms.
Yeah. Yep, that sort of adds to the chaos of the area, right? is this political chaos. Um, and amongst that political chaos, it allows for greasy palms for corruption to flourish, and that makes doing business there more expensive. It makes service provision by government more expensive and difficult and longer and trickier because oftentimes the money gets misspent. The money for improvements, infrastructure improvements, or other types of community improvements and projects gets misspent on other things, or there's just inefficient spending of the money. There's unaccounted for expenses, or there's missing expenses, or there's all kinds of things that happen that basically means the community does not get value for money, and a big cause of that is corruption, and part of the cause for the corruption is they don't have good elected representatives. The quality of the politics in these communities is sadly lacking, and it's quite a sad and it feels often like an intractable situation there.
So yeah, I think I think that's the sort of the most we can probably speculate about it at this point. I mean, it does highlight 100 different issues spiraling in different directions, sort of a fractalization of the setup of this particular space. In some ways, I'm kind of to echo that video's ethos. I'm glad that there's some attention on it, because for all of our effort from the inside to create all we could really do, even through really strong partnerships with CPFs and SAPs and others, is get them to a conversation. We couldn't get any action. We could get them to share knowledge, which is unto itself, as underneath this crisis, is that doesn't happen.
Yeah, because everyone's protecting their fiefdoms and hugging their data.
Right. He's perceived as an enemy of SAPs, so they're not gonna give him anything. So we kind of had even at the time, I was very aware that we had a very lucky scenario in being able to pull all of these entities into one room along with the community and create a synthesis of this information. And I suppose it as much as we've already submitted this to all the government and the mayor and everybody else, I think it might be incumbent upon us to resubmit it to important people, in part Ian himself, to say, hey, I am sure that you're having trouble with this, and probably continuing to have I don't want to say too much about it now or in an email or a call, but the stifling politics of this situation means you're probably not moving on this issue very quickly. But here is how far we got informally and without a mandate. And the reason that's important is because the minute you're given the mandate, you're going to lose those participants.
Yeah.
Like if we were given a mandate from the city to do it, or if we were given a mandate from SAPS to do it, we wouldn't have the participation that we had.
Yeah, people would fall off. Right?
We had no dog in the race, except we wanted to see safer streets. So people showed up and felt obligated to show up. And we obviously pressured where we could to do that. But that workshop was like an all-day workshop with all of those parties present, including business people and others, to say, here's our crisis zone in the city, and within that, here are our hotspots, and within that, here are the motives.
Yeah,
the motives and the operations.
Yeah, just to expand on that, one of the reasons why people would fall off if we got a mandate from, say, the city or national government or any particular major role player here is because you'd be seen as an agent of that role player, and because these all the different other sort of role players in this scenario have got so much beef with each other that they just wouldn't take you seriously if they felt that you were let's say, for example, you got a mandate from the city of Cape Town, then a national entity like SAPS wouldn't want to play ball with you, because they'd be worried that they'd be sort of seen by the ruling party at national government to be playing ball with local government with the opposition run local government, the DA run local government, and the same sort of vice versa. But also, other members of the community would sort of have their own questions about it as well. So, sort of coming in as a free agent sort of actually makes it much easier in these conditions than actually getting a mandate from sort of a major entity. I mean, I suppose you could get a mandate from an NGO, in which case, that would be fine. Like, people generally don't have much beef with individual NGOs or civic society. But in terms of structures of government, and it's a good example of how in South Africa, different, especially when it comes to the Western Cape versus national government, or the city of Cape Town versus provincial government. Like, these different structures of government don't really like playing ball with each other much of the time. Not all the time. I think it's a bit better than it was, maybe a decade ago. But especially between the city of Cape Town and province, it's much better. But certainly between province or city of Cape Town and national government, it's still quite tricky.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think I think we maybe we'll try that in the meantime and see if anybody responds. But yeah, I have been asked for it over the course of the last 2 years since we did it, and every time I send it, I just get "This is great, thanks."
Yes, I think that's what we're going to get, and
Probably.
anything that actually comes out of it will be. We won't see it because it'll be kind of behind the scenes.
Someone will use it as like as a prop weapon in an argument.
Totally, yes.
In the political,
that's
excos or wherever,
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening here. Is that they're asking for props to fight verbal arguments with each other.
So that's my best take on it for now. I mean, I think there's the likelihood has even risen in my mind that this isn't just a normal hijacking, but irrespective of the motive, it's an interesting articulation of all of these problems all at once. We've got politics problems, we've got oversight problems, we've got traffic problems, we've got crime and hijacking and smash and grab problems. We've got complete dereliction of duty of government to solve anything that could impact that positively, whether it's traffic or business organization. And it's a slice of life that most people, even the people who live in that city, don't really observe. It is a level of I guess risk and violence that people just can't really wrap their head around.
No,
and I would say there's a hijacking attempt, if not a hijacking every day there.
Oh yeah. I would say there's probably at least a hijacking attempt every day, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was an actual hijacking every day there. But I mean, what you just said sort of really highlights how Cape Town is a collection of maybe 5 or 10 towns pretending to be a city. The communities that make up the city of Cape Town are really quite culturally and socially separated from each other, and indeed, Inyanga and Mitchell's Plain are a good example. I mean, they're both right next door to each other, or at least the Gunya area, the Gugulethu, Inyanga, Khayelitsha area is right next door to Mitchell's Plain, and they are very different communities. They don't often interact with each other at all, and don't have much of an interest in interacting with each other. And that's just one example of many.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can do this for England, but it'd be like if you tried to jam some, the cultural separation isn't as simple as suburb, town and gown, the way that we think all cities have. Oh, there's that village up there, and they do it differently, right? The difference is the difference between down Manhattan and a rural informal township of Alabama.
Yeah, it would be like if Manhattan was right next door to a rural area an hour's drive from Montgomery, Alabama, right?
Right. That's kind of the level of difference in it, right? Culturally, socially, the expectations, the way they understand and perceive their relationship to government and systems and everything else. So it's a bit like that, and then you got to jam, 100,000 people into a square kilometer.
Yeah, and to add to the complexity, it's not just like Manhattan versus rural Alabama. It's because that's just two communities. There are at least sort of 5 or 6 or more communities that have this difference from each other.
Yeah.
So it's very
Yeah,
it's
I couldn't even come up with enough disparity in the United States to construct this town in the way that we're trying to articulate it. But yeah, I can't think of a point of reference in England that would be a facsimile. But yeah, it's a drastic cultural difference. Like not just different people with a different language, but much more.
Yeah, I think maybe in an American context, you'd have to throw in English-speaking Canada, French Canada,
Right. Yeah.
Puerto
Montreal.
Rico,
Right.
and parts of Mexico into
Yeah.
the
Puerto
pot, and then
Rico's
you
a
get
good
an
one. Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Whereas in the United Kingdom, I just don't think there is an example. I mean, even if you compare like England and Scotland, it's like England and Scotland are just not that as different. Um, it's a comparison that even though people in England and Scotland like to think of themselves as being that different from each other, in comparison here, it's just not the difference. It just isn't that big.
That's actually something for me to chew on. You and I started this conversation with like my boredom in Boulder, my private blog that is my journal, just bored in Boulder. But like, I wonder how much of me has become addicted to that level of diversity in my stone's throw. There's a part of me that will never feel at home again until I'm completely out of water.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
yeah. I mean, like one of the things I really like about Cape Town is it's very cosmopolitan. It's very diverse, and actually always has been very cosmopolitan and always diverse ever since the day it was founded. It's always been a port city with very different people from very different cultures and groups and perspectives living in it, and Cape Town's made it work.
Yeah. Yeah, in a way, right? Yeah.
In a way, it's far from perfect.
It is not falling apart. It is not.
Yeah.
It is not collapsing on itself.
Yeah, it's far from perfect. Lots of room for improvement for sure. But it really is a world in itself. If you were to sort of encapsulate an entire world into one city, it's a good example of that.
Yeah. All right, man. I think for now that's all we can really say about it.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good place to wrap us off and end this episode. Thank you so much, Nate.
Thanks, Shug.